What's up, everyone? Welcome to Wednesday Night Mythic Conversations, Mythic-ish conversations, I guess. We're a little bit late, but technical issues aside, we are here now, and we are excited for tonight's conversation. You can see the side. My guest that I have with me tonight, we're going to be talking about the brand new Figura Obscura drop that happened this weekend. So who better to bring in than one of the mans behind the creation of this, everything that you saw this weekend, the sculpting of this amazing new Monkey King figure, Eric Treadaway. Thank you very much for joining this evening.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here to talk monkey today.
So obviously I knew that tonight's conversation had to be about the Figura Obscura drop this weekend. Selfishly, I clearly wanted you on because some of my favorite conversations that I get to have as part of Four Horsemen Studios are with you around Figura Obscura releases. And while we certainly can't, bring the audience up to speed on everything that we talk about, we can certainly let them in on some of the stuff behind Monkey King now that the monkey is out of the bag, right?
Yep, that's for sure. And yeah, I mean, you're right. The conversations about these figures in this line are a lot of fun. It's definitely a geek out session for sure. And they're very different conversations in a lot of ways than conversations that we have about Mythic or Cosmic or whatever else we might be talking about at the time. But these characters, it's like a little research. It's like they're like research projects, really. It's like a research paper for toys. And that's where these are so much fun, because especially we start off with a subject matter that we have some connection to or interest in, or sometimes deeply so, and sometimes that we've just kind of had a brush with, but even if we know it well, there's always more to learn. And all of these characters in Figura Obscura have a deep and rich history to them. So it's fun going down the rabbit hole. And then, when we get together and have conversations about it, then, it's sharing that newly acquired knowledge and, finding out even more. It's just so much fun to talk this stuff.
Yeah. And we're going to dig into Monkey a little bit. Before we do that, one thing we would be remiss in not saying is just a heartfelt thank you to everyone that supported this figure this weekend. We always do with Figura Obscura, we tease this on Friday. I actually mentioned at the end of my show last week, I got a very special show. I'm working on getting a special guest. We already knew we were going to do this. Obviously, this was all lined up. And I had to hold back not revealing something, not giving people a tease. But we teased it on Wednesday, dropped it on Saturday. And, by the end of the weekend, by early Monday morning, I woke up and this thing was sold out. So absolutely incredible that the amount of support we got. So genuinely, thank you to everyone for your enthusiasm and your supporting, spreading the word, and making the purchases of Sun Wukong this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of this like these making figures of some of these characters. I've said this before about other things too, but it almost feels indulgent in a way, because it's, some of these characters are things that we grew up with, or that we've been fascinated with, and wanted a toy of, or a certain version of the character that maybe we haven't seen before. So yeah, I mean, the support, it allows us to do this, and each time, the more obscure the character, the more of a risk it is. So to have the support that we've been getting on these, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So we have a lot to dig into for this. One of the things I think, just Figura Obscura in general, one of the things I know I love about it, and I would imagine you love as well, is, like you said, they're little research projects. They're little self-contained projects. And it's so different when we have the conversations around Figure Obscura than the ones around Mythic Legions and Cosmic Legions. I love the conversations around those two IPs, but every decision we make has a ripple effect. We have to think about everything that we've already done, everything we want to do. We are, genuinely planning years ahead and saying, okay, the things we're going to do today in this wave, and the story we're going to reveal, and the characters we're going to introduce the fans to, how does that have an impact? With Figura Obscura, it's really refreshing to be able to work on one project and know that it doesn't have to have that ripple effect. You can genuinely just dig into this project, and then when it's done, you can move on and wait for the release. I imagine that that's really, really refreshing for you as a creator of these.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very liberating. And not to say, all of that interconnectivity, and, the interwoven plot lines and interchangeable parts and all that, with the other lines. I mean, that is what's so much fun and so rewarding about working on those projects. So it's not to say that is a bad thing. It's just that in this case, it's nice to have that contrast where it's, it is just very freeing. Like here, we don't have to plan, even necessarily doing other characters that go along with this character, or, we don't have to. I mean, in the past, just like kind of like your traditional line of thinking about an action figure line is, you do your waves of 4, your waves of 6, and how long can you keep, you want to keep it running for a while. And it's, Headless Horseman's a good example. Like, Headless Horseman is a great subject matter. That set made such a cool, iconic, there you go, package. But do you like to go for a full line out of that? I mean, you can't go that far because there's not really that many named characters in the story, but Ichabod Crane's nowhere near as compelling as the Headless Horseman. Brom Bones, cool. I mean, I'm sure you could probably get a decent little 4-figure wave out of it, but still nothing's going to match that.
It's all about that sort.
Arguably Monkey King, you could go deeper.
Yeah. Yep. And a number of people have asked if we're going to do the companions and stuff.
Right. And it, I don't have an answer for that right now. But the fact that we could just do a Monkey King and call it a day, if that's what ultimately happens down the road, that's okay. Like that one figure is enough to where it's a great piece, and great that we could, kind of delve into that lore and that story. It's fodder for a really cool figure. I mean, armored monkey.
Yes.
Can't
exactly. You had me there. So when I said I enjoy the conversations around Figure Obscura, we have deep conversations, and we have a running list that's very lengthy of potential Figure Obscura characters we could do. Um, Interestingly, Sun Wukong was never on that list. So for us to be able to release this now, and we should say that previous Figura Obscura releases have all been in stock. They've genuinely been in the warehouse when we did the sale. The Sun Wukong sale was a little bit different. It is actually on the water. It is on the way. It is expected in within a few weeks. We dropped it when we did simply because the calendar is as busy as it is. In a couple weeks, on June 2nd, we are going to have the sale, the pre-order sale for Mythic Legions All-Star 6. So we didn't want to hold Monkey off until after that. So this was the right time for us to be able to offer that. But ultimately, it's almost like an in-stock sale. It's be here imminently.
Right.
So to be able to do that, this was being worked on. This was actually being worked on well before Headless Horseman or Father Christmas ever actually dropped. So this was a while ago. And this was, I would still say, in the earliest days of Figure Obscura. Again, we had only, when you started working on this, we had only dropped one figure, right? We had only dropped Krampus at that point. So interestingly, this one was not on that list we talked about, but this was something you have wanted to do for a really, really long time. I personally was not that familiar with the character. I am now because of all the research I did. So talk a little bit about you wanting to do Sun Wukong and really where this inspiration came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, this was, it wasn't a story that I was familiar with as a kid or anything like that, but it was something I discovered, I don't know, in adulthood somewhere. I can't say for sure, but it's something that I had seen around. Like I had seen images of the character before, and never, I never thought that much about it. It was always a cool image, just monkeys are cool, apes are cool, just but I picked up a graphic novel. It was a Dark Horse collection of an artist, I can't remember how you say his first name, but Tarada, that he was, and I knew the artist well because he was part of, there was a group of Japanese artists, Takeya and Nirasawa. They all worked on these stories called Creature Core. They do a lot of movie work in Japan, a lot of TV work, like a lot of prop making and concept art and stuff like that. So I was always familiar with the artist. And then he did these, and I don't know if they're manga, graphic novels. I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of like almost in between, I feel like. And I loved it. Like they were great. It was a very non-traditional take on the story. It was almost like if you took a combination of Simon Bisley and like Conan and applied it to Monkey King. His Sun Wukong was very like this ripped, muscular, shirtless, like warrior monkey, very violent, lot of adult content in it, but the general themes of the story and just the character itself, I was very, very intrigued by. And so I did, started doing research on it, and over the years have looked at different adaptations and followed the character, and I actually started, it's been long enough that I actually started this figure in a very different form around the time we started working on Mythic Legions. So I started this figure in traditional in Castelline years ago. Again, like it was a very different look at the character, but this goes as far back as at least the beginnings of Mythic. But I'm glad I waited.
Yeah.
What we ended up with is that I think a much better figure than what would have happened, and also significantly more true to the source material. I think respectful of the source material, which is it's something that I think we're all proud of at this point, is that although we're having a lot of fun with it, and at the end of the day trying to make cool figures, also taking a serious look at the lore and the subject matter, and doing it justice.
And that's one of the fun things about Figura, right? Is, I mean, with Mythic and Cosmic Legions, sky's the limit. Do whatever we want because it's our IP. But you've worked for years. The studio's worked for years on other properties as well. Properties you love and you grew up with, Masters of the Universe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Nightmare Before Christmas. You've worked on all of these, and while I know it's great to work on characters like that, there's a set of constraints that you have to abide by, in part because the licensor is telling you this is what it's got to be. Figura Obscura is kind of best of both worlds, because there are a set of constraints based on the character, but there's no licensor telling us that we can't push things around a little bit, and we can't do a version that we want. Sun Wukong is a perfect example. There are so many different versions and so many different interpretations of this character that being able to take the ones that you like to create the Figura Obscura version of Sun Wukong is something that is really refreshing.
I mean, you saying best of both worlds is absolutely right. And again, that's where, Mythic and Cosmic, because it's our IP, it's very blue sky. Here, the existing subject matter and the constraints are actually part of what makes the process enjoyable. And looking at what's been done out there, because statues, Legos, movies, television shows, books, I mean, it is a very interpreted story.
Yep.
But in a lot of these depictions, it tends to be, for my taste at least, more, he's a monkey, but there's some humanity to the character. I mean, he's certainly anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes more than others, but for my taste, most of what I've seen is far more human than what I care for. And even reading the stories, I think a lot of those depictions are more human than, at least the way I would take the book.
Yep.
And so that, that's, so what this comes down to is, like, even though it's existing, it's kind of like, well, what's our take on it?
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was, getting that more simian version of the character out there. And, I think just from all of the costume elements and the accessories and everything like that, I think all of that early on, I would have tended to take a lot more, a lot more liberty with that. But as I got more into it, I wanted to, really be true to what was there. With enough interpretation to it where it's, it still feels like something fresh and, something that fits in to a certain degree, with what we do. It's fits in, but it's bringing something new to the table as well.
Well, speaking of bringing something new to the table, one of the things that we talked a lot about this weekend with this figure, and fans certainly talked a lot about, are the new pieces on Monkey King. So, if we look at obviously the first two figure obscures, and we've told this story before, but for our viewers tonight, Krampus and Headless Horseman were kind of designed around the same time. They were both designed before Figura Obscura was a thing. Like there was no that name didn't exist when they were created. They genuinely were created as some fun holiday releases. Figura Obscura, the name came up when we were releasing Krampus, and we literally said, where do we put it? Like, where do we put it on the website? Do we put it under the Mythic Legions tab? Do we make a new section for it? And that's kind of the genesis of this. And because of the success, this line grew very organically to become what it is today. But those early Figura Obscura releases were a lot of existing tooling with very small amounts of new parts. Krampus is, the tail, the head, the fur, and then the accessories. Headless Horseman, same thing, the neck and the pumpkins and so forth. Monkey King is almost top to bottom a brand new figure in terms of new parts. This is something that, because of the success of Figura Obscura, because we know that there's a demand for it, we know that we can invest more heavily in these figures. And you've taken that to an extreme, and you've decided that you're going to create these figures and go for broke. And we really get to see the benefits of that in a character like Monkey with all these new parts.
Yeah, that is for sure. I've talked about this many times before. I mean, this speaks to, everything that we've been doing. I mean, just the fan support is just so incredible for these figures that, our way to pay back that support is to, it allows us to do more and more parts. When working on this, obviously the first and foremost, it's about making it look like the character's supposed to look. But of course, it's in the back of my head the entire time. This piece is going to be great for a pop and swap, or for folks who want to see, I don't know what character, but a certain particular character, they'd be able to use these forearms or these hands, or this tail will, be there's nothing too specific about the tail. That tail can be a very versatile piece moving forward. It's backwards compatible, forwards compatible. So that is very exciting to be able to, from a line that started off with so much reuse to have the luxury of going in and making these custom parts like this, that not only work for the specific figure, but they pay dividends, moving forward, as this library of parts just grows and grows.
Yeah. There's a ton of parts on this that are going to get reused, but it's also cool that there are parts that won't. I mean, I don't know how many characters we're going to release that are going to come with Peaches, but that's an investment that we made. It was important for this character. I saw all the pieces of this character before I was familiar with the story. And as I read the story and I realized, oh, that's where the Phoenix Feather Cap comes from. That's where the Cloud Walking Shoes, the Immortal Peach, all those things are core parts of Sun Wukong's story. And by the way, if you aren't familiar with Journey to the West with Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, there is a fairly detailed write-up on sourcehorseman.com. We do this for every release, and we get great feedback. People, even in the chat tonight, have said they very much enjoy learning about these characters. And that is just meant to, kind of whet your appetite. There's so much more out there that you can learn, including, the original text. Of course, the original text is in Chinese. There are translations. I personally read one called Monkey by Arthur Whaley, which is a very popular American translation of that. But yeah, to have that mix of tooling we're going to get to reuse, parts we're going to get to reuse, and then parts that are unique, that's great as well. Speaking of the parts in this character, we saw these comments tonight, seen them all weekend. A number of people genuinely appreciative that we decided to explore a different culture. And, we can certainly tell people that this is something you and I talk about all the time. The diversity that we can bring into Figura Obscura, being able to explore different world cultures and legends that are not something, like you said, that we may have grown up with. That's an important and exciting part of the line as well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, well, in general, I mean, it's just that's the part of the exciting part of this line is that we can pull from anything and from anywhere, and that a lot of the suggestions and guesses and stuff like that we've been seeing have been for a lot of American folklore and a lot of like European folklore and things like that. And so, I think that's from the surprise factor, that's part of what pulled this one out of left field a little bit more. But, it's just, there's an entire world out there to pull from. So, to kind of limit ourselves to any particular subject matter or region or whatever, it's just limiting. So, to go not only within this line, but really, it's a new look and influence that we haven't seen a lot of in Mythic yet. I mean, maybe some hints here and there, but it's just a way to bring, again, something new to the table that, even just seeing, the pop and swaps that Bill put up the other day, and seeing the ones that you've put up on Instagram and stuff like that. We're just scratching the surface here. This is within, just kind of, for Bill, like he saw this and had not a huge amount of time to come up with pop and swap. So these are, on the fly pop and swaps, and over time, is now that people are seeing this, I'm sure they've already got recipes cooking and stuff like that. So it's great to see new parts like this that are going to be able to get infused into people's builds. I mean, yeah, all of this.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And this is all pop and swap at this point. I mean, you're not even getting into heavy customizing yet. So, I mean, it's, I expect by Legion's Con, there's going to be an entirely new, subcategory of customs and parts that we're going to see out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's to be able to mix and match parts from Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, Figura Obscura, absolutely incredible.
Well, that's what that monkey had on the Cosmic figure caught me completely by surprise, because I've been thinking Mythic so much with this that it's perfect. And kind of going back to what we've been saying with Cosmic, where some of the early expectations were that that it was going to be space dwarves and space orcs and things like that. We've always said all of that stuff is great. Like, you can make some spectacular figures doing that. But that's not really where we're going with the story, but it's more, but from a figure standpoint, it's more about, giving you the tools to put together these figures. And that's a great example of it. I mean, I don't, that's a figure I would not ever expect to see in Cosmic, never say never, but I wouldn't expect to see it, but the parts are there. So
certainly
it's, that thing's cool.
So I do want to give the fans some time to ask some questions. We are going to try to keep the questions somewhat Figura Obscura related tonight, and we're not going to tell you what other ones are coming out, but I do want to open that up. But Eric, you said that you had some stuff that you had dug out you wanted to show tonight. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. I just, since I mentioned this earlier, this was some very, very rough attempts at this is that Monkey King figure that I was talking about. That's 10, 11 years old at this point. And just to kind of show the I guess level of dedication to get the figure right. And also, I guess one of the downsides of working traditionally is I never got to a finish, but went through 3 pretty far along sculptures of this. So, I speak about this a lot when I'm talking about the digital sculpting, like to make, to play around with changes and make decisions and try different things with sculpting and digitally. I can do it. I can press save, try another one, or press Control Z and go backwards 20 steps.
Yep.
Whatever. You can be very bold with the decision making, and there's no limit to the creativity. That right there, that wasn't, even though those are extremely rough, that was no small amount of time that it took to try that over and over again.
I can imagine.
If it's 4% too big or 5% too big, start over. So
looking at those, knowing what you did digitally, it must make you even more appreciate being in ZBrush these days.
Oh, it does, because there's certain things on this figure that, and I mean, don't get me wrong, this figure took a lot of time to do. Like it was, one of the more labor intensive figures that I've done in a while. And that armor, that mountain pattern, which is that mail pattern that's in the pauldrons and on the front of the chest plate and the loincloth. Yeah, that. Doing that by hand, it would have been a nightmare. And that was something, it took a long time for me to get exactly right digitally even. But by hand, it would have been much, much worse. So I could spend my time on other parts of the figure rather than that.
So let's look at some questions. So Laura's saying, since you're opening things up, I've got both of you here. Any updates on the book? A lot of people ask about the book. I can tell you that the book is, 2 volumes. That's what we're planning for Rise of the Dark 4. Volume 1 is 5 distinct parts. We are on the 5th part of that right now, so we know how we need to get there. So this is the first part of the process, going through all the writing. Eric, you've been reviewing chapters and stuff, correct?
Yes. I went back and started. I went back and started at the beginning because I wanted to do a full thing. It had been a while since I had read that, but I mean, I will say this: I love it. there's, you know, stuff that I've created over the years and written, you know, many years of bios and all this stuff. And then, but for me, reading every time I get a new chapter, it's like reading it for the first time, and it's very exciting. Like it's a lot of fun. And
That's cool.
I've read stuff before where it's not, interpretations of things that I've created, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
So we're very, very much in sync.
We are
on this. So I don't know that there's been anything where, you know, Jeremy's come up with something I've said that, no, that's not going to work. It's, you know, it makes it, you know, it makes it better. It fills things out. You know, I feel like every time we talk about things and every time I see something new, it just like things just click. Like they just fall into place, and connections, they're just working. Like it's just like the puzzle pieces are just coming together.
Yeah. I find myself writing and wanting to like go faster because I want to know what happens. Like I'm writing the book and I'm reading the book at the same time, if that makes any sense. Like it's a very strange scenario to be in. But yeah, so that's the update. We don't have a date for you when it will be available, but we're working on it. So this is a good question from Curtis. He says, when it comes to the retail version of Figure Obscura releases, can you talk about the process of deciding what changes to make?
Yeah. We haven't discussed much on this one yet, just some very broad conversations, but just as a, you know, kind of a general part of the discussion is, you know, it's a lot about finding the right balance of bringing something new to the table, not straying too far so that if it's somebody who didn't get the initial release and wanted that initial release, it's not so far that they're not getting at least something that's close to what they missed out on. Bringing something, you know, the part of bringing something new to the table is so that for retailers that we do right by them, and that it brings something, you know, it brings people to them. And there's a reason to, you know, potentially for some people who bought the first one to come back, but definitely, you know, that anybody who missed out has that second chance to get in there. And it's still got to be true to the source material. You know, it's not going to be, I don't know, like, you know, we're not going to do Krampus painted like a candy cane or something like that. There's got to be some reasoning for it. So it's and some are simpler than others. Like Father Christmas, you know, we used Victorian greeting cards as our inspiration for that. And you know, there's a lot of red, but you know, you also see his coat in a lot in green, but in blue, purple, black, brown, so that I was actually very excited to go back and do that, and with the green and with the brown fur on it, because it actually feels even more, I think, in a way like what we were going for with the entire project. You know, in having the second chance to go down a different avenue, that's you know, that's a great place to be, because I don't know, like I said, I actually like the second Father Christmas better than the first, but I do think that red was the correct decision to go with first, because it's just the more recognizable take on the character.
Yeah, and we do that. I mean, because a lot of people, like Headless Horseman's a perfect example. So, you know, we did that first version, and when we do the first version, we actually don't plan out the second one at the same time. We don't say, okay, let's do the first one and the second one and design them both. We design the first one, and it's the version that we want. For Headless Horseman, it was the version that we felt was the most iconic. When it came time to do the retailer version, I almost feel like we went more like the Disney route. We went more like the spectral with the green flames and stuff. And there are some people that are certainly going to prefer that because it's got glow in the dark and everything. But it is always a decision, like again, what you just said with Father Christmas, where doing the version that we feel is right and more iconic for the first, and then when it comes time, we've always said if we're going to do a retailer version, we have to make sure it's successful and there's actually demand out there. We'd love to do a retailer version for every single one of them, because that means that every single one is a success. But I agree with everything you said. It really focus on the first one and then figure out, okay, what can we do for a second version that's still within character?
Yep.
Speaking of success, do you ever get nervous before release in terms of fan reaction, or do you know ahead of time it's a home run? I can answer that for you. He's always nervous. He's always nervous that this is going to be the one that fans are like, this one's not for me. Hard pass. So yeah, no, nothing's a guarantee. We do what we want to do, what we think fans are going to enjoy, but we don't take anything for granted, right?
No, you can't. You can't. I mean, if you have to stay on your toes, and you don't want to get jaded or overconfident. I mean, you want to keep pushing yourself and all that, and any of those are a sign that you're going that way. So, but yeah, I mean, we do genuinely get just every time like a little bit of nerves, no matter how confident we are in the quality of the figure.
Yeah.
It's just, again, go back to what I said before. I mean, you just don't know how people are going to react, or if it's outside of people's comfort zone, or what they consider part of their collection. On this one, even I did see several people say, great looking figure, just not for me, or doesn't fit my collection, or variations on that, which is very, very fair. I get it. But what we don't know is, okay, it wasn't enough to affect sales, but we may hit one where that pocket of sentiment is larger, where it actually does make a dent, and then we have to take a second look at that.
Well, and that is important, because I will readily admit that when we plan these out, we don't say what will sell, what are people asking for. Like, those aren't the first two questions we say. It's, what do we want to do? What do we want? What do we think is cool? You once said that if you're ever working on a Figura Obscura just to fill a slot, just because you have to knock out that project, we're doing it wrong. These are passion projects. These are things we genuinely want to see out there in the world. So when you do that, when you make things genuinely that you want, and that is your primary focus, not necessarily what do we think is going to be a home run, you're taking some risk.
Yeah, you actually brought up something interesting there, because I have said that, and I know some people. One of the other things that caught people off guard with this is that it wasn't a holiday related piece, which of course, for us that's been a fact for a long time now. But this is the first, I guess, announcement to the world that's the case, and. That is very true. Like, if we get to the point one year where it's it's Halloween or Christmas, whatever, and nothing's clicking, it's very, very likely that we just won't do one. I don't see a reason to do one just to fill a slot. Monkey King's one that I knew for a long time would happen early, whereas I was about to say too much.
Everyone's like,
one of the future ones, I like I didn't. There was a while where just like nothing was clicking, and probably the light bulb went off within a matter of a couple weeks before it happened. And then once the idea happened, it was absolutely perfect in all ways. But if that wouldn't have happened, we would have waited until something else did.
Yep. So we're going to bang out some of these so we can get through a bunch of them.
Okay.
At this point, how many figures have concepts or have been worked out? We'll just say multiple. We're not going to give a number, but
good
there
answer.
are multiple ideas that are in different stages.
Yes.
Let's see. So this is an interesting question. Any plans to reuse the monkey head with different face plates? And I imagine they're asking about the retailer versions, because that's one thing we didn't touch on. We actually don't want to add multiple parts, because we've talked about adding different parts to the retailer versions. But to your point, where we don't want people to feel like they have to buy a second version because there's brand new parts in it, we've actually avoided that about sculpting brand new pieces to put in secondary versions for that reason, right?
That's exactly it. Like, I feel like if we added new face plates to the retailer version, I mean, you're basically in a way kind of betraying everybody who bought in this weekend, because you'll almost be forcing them to buy a second version, and that's just doesn't feel right.
Who's your favorite Figura Obscura so far? Or do you love all of them? Well, we know we love all of them. Do you have a favorite?
It might be this one.
I'm going to say that as well. It's the newest.
I mean, that a lot of times factors in.
If we can add in ones that aren't released yet, it's not my favorite. What's more challenging, human or animal sculpts?
For me, I think human. I always love to do animal drawings, sculptures, things like that. I don't know, like it just I don't know, it's always just appealed to me. Humans are tougher because you don't look in the mirror and see a monkey or an elephant or whatever. So even just based on that, and then your family are humans. Like, you look at human faces day in and day out. Even if you're isolated by yourself somewhere, you got a mirror more than likely, and you see yourself. So all of the little intricacies and subtleties of the human face, human proportions, hands, whatever. Whereas animals, they're a little, you just don't see the subtleties the same way. So I think in getting it right, humans are a little more challenging, but there's not to say there aren't challenges with an animal. Like the horse is probably one of the longest amount of times that I've ever spent on a project at all. Or you get into, I don't know, like something that's fur covered, or with or a turtle or something like that, and you look at like the combination of scales and plates and all that, you get into different types of challenges with animals that are tough too.
So what is the criteria for something we consider for Figura Obscura? I mean, other than what we just said, something you generally want to do. We've said before that, obviously we've drawn from holidays, we've drawn from literature, but world cultures and mythology and cryptozoology and legends. I mean, these are all things. I mean, basically, it's got to be something that we can make. Characters like Headless Horseman and Father Christmas, there's no copyright on those. These are not from a movie or a comic or something that, we'd have to attain a license. Anything that you would add to what you consider makes a character considered for Figura Obscura?
It's all, what you said is absolutely correct. That the starting point is that public domain aspect, because it's, we're not, it's not a licensed brand. I would say past that, ultimately, it's just that it makes a compelling action figure. That, I don't even look at it so much like it needs to be compatible with Mythic or Cosmic, at least from a subject matter standpoint. I mean, structurally, I don't think, we would delve too far out of that. I mean, maybe something might break that mold, but it's got to be just a good looking figure that's compelling story wise as well as aesthetically. That even if you don't know the story, you don't know Mythic, you don't know Cosmic, you don't know Four Horsemen, it's it's enough that it could stand on its own and just be an exciting purchase for somebody's collection, no matter what.
I'll tell you, being a part of Four Horsemen Studios, I know that everything we do is a team effort. However, I think that one of the things I love about Figura Obscura so much is you see the team effort in these releases in a different way, more so than I would say in some of our other releases. Whether it's, clearly we talk about the gorgeous packaging that these come in and just the wonderful art that Nate March does on these. Obviously, the sculpting and painting of the figures, the storylines that go with them, the soft goods from CJ, the photography from Trevor, even the fun little extras like the tumblers and the pins and the mugs and all those things. To me, that is one of the things that I think make these releases so special is I look at these and I genuinely see like all of us putting a stamp on this release in some way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interactive, like to the next level.
Yeah.
And like, it's, I like when I'm doing my, my sculpting and design on this, even though like I knew the character, I've known it over the years, like, again, super deep dive into, why the armor looks the way it does, what he should come with, why, just why things are the way that they are. And then, then I get to watch you do it with the story. So you go on your own creative, into your creative rabbit hole. And then, Nate, it's the same thing. Like, I know, like, he spends a tremendous amount of time on research because he's looking at different aspects of it. And like, and fun to me from the standpoint to the point of like, I don't think this packaging, I don't think I gave like Nate any direction at the beginning. Like he did his own thing. I think Chris probably gave more direction than anybody else. But beautiful. And he did. Like when I first pictured what packaging for this would have looked like, it was not that.
Mm-hmm.
But to watch him come up with it, puts me in the fan seat for a bit. There's an upcoming one that, again, I had no direction for him, and like watching him do what he does is just amazing. yeah, there's one. I'm very excited. I'm trying. I'm just watching myself like it's, but it's just cool watching everybody do their thing. And I mean, it is, like you said, it is across the board. Like, whether it's the paint or like those extra items that George puts together, whether it be the pins or what have you. Like, it's, yeah, everybody's excited about the project, and puts their best foot forward.
So I'm going to answer this one from Curtis. Says, some of us are struggling with where to put Figura Obscura in our collection. As a collector, do you keep it separate or display with Mythics? I mean, clearly I have my display, so I'll answer that. I had put them with Mythic at first. So Krampus was with my Mythic and so forth. Now that the line is expanding, it's at the point where we have enough that I'm starting to put them by themselves. Because even though we said that Figura Obscura's, we don't think about them, they're not tied in together. It's not, a line where these characters interact. In my own headspace, they're kind of part of this little pantheon, this little Figura Obscura, even on the website where it says, these characters that are called forth by Four Horsemen Studios. So we are now at the point that I'm starting to be able to flesh out a display of just Figura Obscura. So that's what I'm doing, but certainly they could mix and match with your existing lines as well.
Most of mine are packed away with holiday decorations. Yep. So which I like that kind of thing too, because then they're special every year when you pull them back out again. Yep.
So this is one I felt bad about. Any comment on the Norse runes on some of the scrolls? It was a stock photo. Like we needed. So this particular one, when we do the teasers, like the teaser for Headless Horseman with the pumpkin, a lot of people guessed Headless Horseman. The teaser with the wrap package for Father Christmas, a lot of people guessed Santa. This one, you specifically wanted to maintain the element of surprise, so much so that the teaser that actually said the Figura Obscura adventure continues, it originally said the Figura Obscura journey continues because of Journey to the West. And you had said, you know what, let's change that word. It's too obvious. So those scrolls were meant to be just generic scrolls. They're meant to represent the Buddhist sutras that, they go retrieve in Journey to the West. So those Norse runes, and there were other writing on there as well, that was actually not meant to throw you off. It was part of the stock photo, but it served to throw people off a little bit and preserve that surprise a little bit more.
The original text was the perfect teaser. It was just too perfect.
I know. Okay, looking for more comments here. So this is an interesting one. We've had 3 releases that lean more fantasy with a Mythic crossover. Would you be willing to do Figura Obscuras that would lean more to sci-fi, like the Flatwoods Monster or some others? So without saying what we're going to do, would we ever consider doing other stuff that's less Mythic fantasy compatible?
Yes. Yeah, if it made sense. Yeah. I mean, because again, it's just, bigger worldview, more variety. Just needs to feel right.
Yep. I recently got past the point where everyone was clamoring for Candy Cane Krampus. I'm backtracking, so I'm seeing comments that are based on our conversations, as we've said.
I'm gonna have to eat my words.
Do you sculpt every aspect of these figures, including the accessories?
Most of the time. A lot of the early accessories I didn't. But I have done more recently just because a lot of them are so integrated with the figures and the character. that I just, I don't know. It seems more like it's part of the character. So I'm doing a lot of it at the same time.
Okay, makes sense. So someone was asking a question about the process that actually goes into the packaging design. And you had mentioned on this one, we didn't give Nate much, much feedback. When he was on my show, actually, I had him on my show around Christmas time to talk about the Father Christmas. And, one of the things he mentioned is the group chat that we have where different, he sends different ideas. And, when the Figura Obscura key was designed, we sent back ideas through that. And he talked about how that chat is gold. He absolutely loves that chat and stuff. So it is interesting with the packages. Like you said, there are some that include a lot more art direction because there's more of a definitive idea. And there's a lot for this one. It was very much Nate just exploring the story and really kind of working on, he kind of tried to bring in elements of Chinese, like watercolor art and line art and everything and mix it in. So to answer the question, I guess it would be very varied, right? Depends on the project.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
So a lot of people making suggestions, a lot of suggestions for cryptids. That seems to be a popular, whether it's Bigfoot or Mothman or Wendigo, all these different suggestions here.
They all certainly fit
cool.
the criteria.
Yep. They're all very, very cool. So I have caught up. Let's see. Okay. So we are caught up. So if you have any other questions, hit us up here. This is interesting. This is actually something I don't think we've talked about. The answer to a lot of these questions when people say, would you ever do this? The answer is typically it depends if it's appropriate. But with expanding into things like soft goods and bendy parts, do we ever see any of these going into die-cast parts?
If the reasoning was there for it and it made sense, yes. It's not something that we're actively discussing, but interestingly enough, we talked about it a lot, like at the very beginning of the line. I remember when George was doing Skeleton Warriors figures, mm-hmm. They did some metal weapons, and I thought it was really cool. And so we had talked about it early on, because like when he had it done, like they did it locally. And I can't remember exactly if they were add-ons but they weren't done overseas, I don't think. And so we were looking at ways to do cool things that we could get into the line that were, we didn't have to tool or could bring something, extra dimension to the line, and just kind of never panned out. But it's something to consider. I know when I actually came up somewhat recently, and I think
was it Greg Joe talking to you about it?
What's that?
Was it Greg talking to you about it?
I don't remember if he was. He could have been in there. I have lots of discussions at work.
He's in the chat saying, "I brung this up to Eric not long ago."
Okay, yeah, because I remember a lot of times, I'm in a group of multiple people, and these conversations are coming up. But yeah, we were talking about it recently at the office, and I don't know, it may have been Greg. It might have been Joe. I'm not sure, but somebody was talking about the weight of it. Especially if we're talking about weapons. There's other things we could do in die-cast, but that's kind of where my mind goes straight to. You have to consider the weight of something like that and the stress on the wrist joints and all of that. But I like so many things are on the table.
Sure.
Again, we never want to limit ourselves.
It's
just
funny
needs to make sense.
It's funny that you think weapons, because when I think die-cast, I immediately go to the die-cast like mech robot type characters, like the Shogun type things. I mean, not Shogun Warriors, but like those type of imports that
Right.
I had a couple of as a kid, and they were always some of my favorites because they had metal parts on them. So my brain said that they were more special some way.
Yeah, for me that was like G1 Transformers.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, it just kind of adds like a, I don't know, a certain substance like gravitas to the figures, because I still think of those G1 Transformers with the diecast, rubber tires, chrome, the clear windshields, like the high end paint finishes on it. All of it just made it seem like a more deluxe item. And of course, in the 80s, like the cars were $10 a piece, so you were paying a premium price for it. But it was something special, though.
I like it. So, question from Tony says, we've discussed where we get ideas from, but what inspires or motivates you to do your art? What refills your cup, so to speak?
Wow.
Deep question.
It is. I mean, I generally feel pretty inspired. Part of it is, I think, is just that, after so many years of creating and dreaming about doing these characters and figures and stories and all this, that there's never going to be enough time to do all of it. And so, anytime that I get to bring one of these things to fruition, it's still, just as exciting as it's ever been. And so that's part of it. It's just that it's just this opportunity to make this stuff and continue making it. And then of course, every, just the world around us all is inspiring, whether it be nature or architecture or, visiting different places. And of course, seeing other artists, and what they do. And that can come from anywhere. That can come from looking at, classical art and things learned in college or high school or whatever. That stuff pops up constantly. Things that I saw as a kid. Other, contemporaries in the industry. Looking at the, when I go to Legion's Con and see all of the creations that people have on their tables there, there's just, it's really, I mean,
no shortage.
Yeah, there's no shortage. It's kind of everything. It can come from whatever I watch on TV that night, or and a lot of times it comes from where you don't expect it, and that's a lot of fun. When it just kind of comes out of the blue, and oh man, like I gotta sit down and make something.
So Kevin says vac metal gold or silver finishes on cosmic visors. So we said actually right from the beginning when we introduced Cosmic, actually at that virtual Legions Con, when we announced it, one of the things that was said was that being able to explore different finishes is one of the things that was exciting about Cosmic. We've already seen those clear domes, but I don't think this is giving too much away. We do have samples of chrome domes in different colors and gold and silver and all that crazy stuff at the studio. Oh, hold on a minute. Let me solo layout this. Look at that. So there you go. There's some samples.
So, and that's not giving anything away as far as immediate plans. I mean, I'm extremely excited about that because I associate vac metal heavily with sci-fi from, at least from a toy standpoint. Growing up on Micronauts, like there was a great use of vac metal, and just in the 70s and 80s, it was used a lot. For us here, it's just a matter, we got to figure out where the right spot to drop it into Cosmic is, and have it integrate into the line seamlessly. It's got to really propel the story of what we're trying to do, and it's just, we may use it at some point just for fun, like on I don't know, like a show preview figure or something like that, but more officially integrated into the line, though. I want to find the right spot for it, where it really just, it doesn't look like a gimmick. It looks like it's, just going with the flow of everything else that's in the piece.
Lord Venger says, question for both of us. When you're creating characters or when I'm writing their stories, what do the characters sound like? Do you voice cast them? I don't. When I write, it's interesting. I don't imagine, if I'm writing Atlas, I'm not imagining like someone playing Atlas in a live action. I'm genuinely imagining the toy. I actually oftentimes will bring the toys, and when I'm writing a scene with characters, I will put them on the table with me while I'm writing their scenes. Not that I need that help. I just like having my toys out and playing with them. So I don't tend to do that. Do you? Do you do anything like that?
I don't think so. I mean, every once in a while, I think, it might strike me how a character would speak. I think it's subconsciously in there, though, because I think, because every once in a while, like, we've done some stuff where we've worked on scripts or done pitches and things like that in the past. And, if people start throwing out, like, who would play this character, who would play that character, I do immediately know if it's wrong. So, like, I think a lot of the characters, there's kind of like it's more of like there's a general zone where I see those characters sounding like, but it's not that specific. So a lot of times, like I said, it's more a matter of, not even just how they sound, but also what they say. Quicker when it's wrong rather than when it's right.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because obviously, because the book's not out there and the only things that people have are the bios, people have to speculate about these characters. And I will routinely see people offering their thoughts about what a character's personality or demeanor is. And I genuinely have to stop myself from saying no, from like telling them, no, he's not like that. He's like this. I'm like, no, they'll get it eventually. They'll get it. I have to stop doing it. So it's like what you just said, where when it's wrong, you see that and you're like, no, that's not, no. So we clearly got to the point here where you showed the vac metal, because Kevin asked, and we've got someone please do a wellness check on Kevin. We got how much right now? Eric Miller, yes, so much that, please. So clearly the vac metal, that was popular. People like that little tease there. Vac Metal Troll was my band's name in high school. That's a good name. So someone asked earlier, of the three lines that we currently have, Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, and Figura Obscura, do you actually have a favorite? Can you pick a favorite?
I don't really. For me, they're all different parts of the same thing as far as like just from a creative standpoint, because they're scratching different itches. And so a lot of times it's just what I'm working on at the time. Like that's completely where like I go all in, like headspace wise, and like it's hard for me to break out. You know, like sometimes if I'm working on working on Mythic, say, and you know, we're all of a sudden the schedule cycles back around and we're putting together packaging for Cosmic, and you know, maybe bios are being coming up for Cosmic or whatever. It's hard for me to just on a dime like stop thinking Mythic and then go back, you know, go into Cosmic and then jump back out. Like I need to, like, it's like a full immersion. And so I am like 100% into what I'm working on at the time. And so it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of my favorite at the time. And like, for me, my favorite part of it is making it. So that's where like the, you know, my highest level of excitement is. And so like without saying specifically, I just made the transition out of my last set of projects, and today was my first day on a new set of projects. And I am very excited to be on this new piece and kind of going into a new direction right now. So it's, you know, that's what I'm working on now is maybe the line that's my favorite currently.
I have been very vocal in saying that I love everything around Figura Obscura. I mean, that's what we're here talking about tonight. I love the whole process. I love it because it's so condensed, because we tease it on a Friday, we drop it on a Saturday. And, you know, if we get, you know, a success like with Monkey, by Monday, we're thanking everybody for all their support and we're moving on. And you know, we've been incredibly fortunate to have the success. So I love just like the flash, you know, big amount of energy and excitement and everyone really thrilled for it. And because they're in stock and they ship quickly, we go right from that right to people getting it in hand and taking photos and stuff. You know, we talked about the incredible amount of photos we saw of Father Christmas around the holidays. And as corny as this sounds, that made my holiday season that much more memorable because I got to see all of the people sharing that. So I love Cosmic, but I'm the same way as you. When we're gearing up, I love Figura, but when we're gearing up for a Cosmic or when we're gearing up for a Mythic, and I'm seeing those new images and I'm seeing Trevor's photos, and yeah, then you're right back in that space. Or when they actually arrive, you know, when they arrive at the studio and that container comes in and those doors open and you smell that plastic and seawater and you get to crack those cases. I'm not in the studio all the time, but I've been fortunate to be there for a couple container deliveries, and that's super special. So if you ask me that day what my favorite is, it's whatever is in those cases.
Yeah, that's for me. It's when the test shots first come in, it's like in plastic for the first time, and you get to touch it without fear of snapping a piece off. Kind of becomes real at that point.
Eric and Jeremy, please continue with the day of sale reviews for Figura Obscura figures. Seeing it in 3D helps tremendously on these small window sales. Dorklair's review was really compelling. Absolutely. Thank you so much to Bill from Dorklair for his wonderful review. We've heard fans say that they love it. You're simply reinforcing what we already love as well. We agree that he does a great job. We have no intention of that not being a thing going forward. So if you like those reviews, there's going to be more of them coming. A couple people talking about Intern for a Day. Actually, So speaking of all the sculpting and the digital sculpting, Curtis was saying that, you sculpting during that, people that get to go to intern, that's one of the things that one of the workshops we do where you do a sculpting session for everyone. That's a lot of fun. And they get to ask questions specifically about that as well. Let's see. So I answered that earlier. I mentioned the smell of seawater and plastic, and Joe he chimed in and said, "You smell plastic. I smell sweaty, busy guys."
Not untrue.
That's an interesting question. When you're designing a brand new figure before anyone in the studio sees it, do you get input from your family on the concept? Does your son's opinion help guide you in the early stages of design?
Not always, but sometimes absolutely. Um, yeah, there's certain things around here that I know, one of my sons or my wife, might be particularly interested in. So yeah, I like to, even if not, like, I like to get their input. I like, for them to come in and check it out and, kind of get somebody have an early look at it. And, if there's something really off, that actually happened with a color study I was doing the other night. Like I was not 100% sure about it, and I had my wife come in and take a look at it, and she kind of gave me the no way when she saw it, and she was right. Kind of it. Sometimes like I feel that it's right, and it's sometimes like I do question whether because we have to take risks and try some things that are different. She kind of came in and looked at it, and that confirmed my suspicions that it just wasn't going in the right direction, and started over again, and it was the right move.
Yep.
It's the kids more so, if they come in and they don't like something, they're very direct and very blunt about it.
I'll tell you. Kevin's asking, have you seen Nate's map of Cosmerium that he should be working on?
We have discussed it. It needs to happen. We're both very excited about it happening. There is a rough version that I've had since really started putting the story together with this, but it needs to be fully realized, and needs the Nate treatment, and especially thinking back to with Mythic Legions and Mythos, we were going for a while without a nice representation of the map, and there's a point where I was writing like the full treatment, like outline from start to end for Mythic, and Nate did the map around the same time as that, and we kind of figured out where everything was going to go, and broke it down. And then I just remember, as soon as he sent the image over, and I had it at my disposal, I remember finishing that treatment. Again, I mentioned before, certain times when we're working on stuff, like things fall into place and like the puzzle pieces go together, and having that reference point, like, it really made the world more real, and it I don't know, it helped me wrap up the story. So yeah, it's something we have to do. There's a lot.
It's on the growing list.
Yes, the schedule is packed for Nate.
So I've got two things I want to cover, two quick questions, and then I have a good question that we're going to end with. So one thing I wanted to mention, you noticed that both Eric and I are wearing Figura Obscura shirts this evening. Eric's got the brand new one on of Sun Wukong. Those are actually available from our partners over at Retro Rags Limited. But to make life even easier for you, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up storehorseman.com. So Store Horseman is obviously where you do your, Four Horseman shopping. Right on that website now, at the top, there's a new button called Apparel. So what that does is that essentially loads the Retro Rags inventory in this separate window. You click next page. There's literally so much product here. Right at the top are those Monkey King shirts. What this will do is you are actually checking out through Retro Rags. So, if you ever added apparel and figures, that they're not in the same cart. This is a separate cart. It just makes it easier for you to do it because you can do it right on Store Horseman. So all this is available right now. If you want any of that Four Horsemen, Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, Figura Obscura gear, you can get it right there. Next thing to talk about really quick is in this afternoon's 4 o'clock, Four Horsemen o'clock show, we did announce that this coming Saturday, there is going to be an in-stock sale at Store Horseman. So this sale is going to go live this Saturday, which is May 20th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to run for 1 week. We're going to shut it down the following Sunday on the 28th at 11 p.m. at night. It's going to be primarily Alithia figures, and then we've got some All-Stars 3, All-Stars 4. Actually, the image that's on the screen right now are all the items that will be for sale. They will be at normal Four Horsemen prices. So standard figures are $37. The only thing that'll be a little bit different is a lot of the trolls that we have left. The boxes have had a little bit of damage from, moving around the warehouse and stuff like that. They are big boxes. When we do send stuff out to fans, we always try to send them stuff that doesn't have any damages, which means that we end up with stuff left that might have some box dings. These are going to be figures that have some dings. So we actually did lower the price on the trolls a little bit for that reason. The Ice Troll, which is Ice Troll 1, the version with one head, he'll be $80. And the Forest and the Stone Troll 2, the versions with two heads, they will be $85 each. But all this stuff will be available for sale there. Some of them are very limited quantities. There's one figure in this list that's down. We only have one case. There are other figures that are multiple cases. So some of them are going to certainly last longer than others. But that is this coming Saturday at 12 o'clock. And with that, the last question that I think is an interesting one. Let me find it here. So John says, what's an idea that you had that ended up on the chopping block?
Wow. I might be stumped here. I mean, it's a tricky question because
nothing ever is fully on the chopping block. You just showed that monkey that, you could have answered that a year ago and said, oh, this Monkey King that I started, and that would have, led to today.
Right. I mean, it's absolutely true because, starting like a lot of times the waves, they start off with just like a sheet of printer paper, just with a rough sketch, like these little, maybe 2-inch tall thumbnails of potential characters for a wave. Inevitably characters get cut or parts of characters get cut, and then 3 waves later, 4 waves later, that they show back up again. So you're right, nothing ever is ever chopped completely. I'm trying to think if there was.
Well, maybe that is the answer. Maybe the answer is nothing is ever chopped for good. Everything goes into a pile of ideas whose time may not have come, but you never know when they will. Evidenced by what we have right here, a figure that you started around the same time as Mythic Legions, almost 10 years ago, and we're just seeing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of is, if something's cut for a specific reason where it's, it might be too similar to something else that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, I've used this example many times. We've talked about it. The one wave where I had a Fox character in it. And then when you debuted yours, I pulled it off of the, out of the wave. And then that's not to say, but again, to the other point, it's not to say that I wouldn't do it, bring a Fox character in later down the road.
Don't tease me, Eric. There's a whole bunch of people watching this that are going to know that they're going to admit to me that you just said that. Don't tease me.
I never say never. But that's the only thing that I could think of where someone would ever like truly be off the table.
Yeah. I know one. I know there's a kind of character we talked about for the Necronominus wave last year that we ended up scrapping. But you're right, I can't say it because we didn't say we'll never do that. It was just something we discussed, and for certain reasons, it didn't make the line.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
I'm sure you do, because it didn't make the line, but we can't say it because maybe down the road it will.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good question. It's there's more concrete examples. Like if I go back to the days of like working on like DC Classics, or even all the way back to like McFarlane, there were things that were cut along the way that never did come out, for various reasons. So those are things that, I just don't have the control, didn't have the control over to say that could come back at some point. But here, that's the beauty of doing what we do and doing it the way we do. It's, like the possibilities are endless.
They are. And with that, we are going to call it a night. But if you want more of Eric and I talking about toys, you are in luck, because we are going to be doing this again in just about 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, on Friday, June 2nd, we are going to be doing a live reveal special for Mythic Legions All-Stars 6. So everyone voted. We got your votes. We tabulated them. We're going to start releasing the winners. We're going to let you know who those vote winners are starting next week. We'll let you know about that. And then next Friday, we're going to do a reveal special where we're going to show you all the new figures that are going to be in that wave. Remember with All-Stars 5, we called it All-Stars 5 Plus because we added new stuff. Well, we've dropped the plus from this because it was kind of clunky to keep saying that. But the idea of additional figures being added is still something we are doing. We told you when we did the Mythic Legions Necronominus show that 2023 would be the year of Necronominus, and the war between the Congregation and the Order of Aetheron would continue into All-Star 6. We're going to show you what that looks like in just a few weeks. The pre-order for All-Star 6 will go live right at the end of our show. We're working out the time for that, but it'll be an evening show, probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock or something. So stay tuned. Eric, I, and the rest of Full Horseman Studios will be back, and I will be back here next week talking about something else. Eric, thanks very much for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to everyone again for their support this weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Night, everyone.